everyone. My name is Bhavna Mehra, General Manager of the Infosys Science Foundation. It has been my pleasure to welcome you for the last 11 years to this press conference where we announce the winners of the Infosys Prize. And I'm very happy to be able to continue, despite circumstances, this tradition in the 12th year, albeit in a slightly different format. So welcome to you all. With us today are our trustees, Mr. N.R. Narayana Murthy, President of the Board of Trustees of the Infosys Science Foundation, Mr. Srinath Bhatni, Mr. K. Dinesh, Mr. Gopalakrishnan, Mr. Nandan Nilekani, Mr. Mohandas Pai, Mr. Shibulal, and I would also like to welcome the CEO of Infosys, Salil Parekh. Thank you for joining us. We're very pleased to be able to welcome some of the members of our jury. Professor Ajay Sood from the Indian Institute of Science has joined us very kindly. Professor Subir Sachdev from Harvard. Professor Ashwini Deshpande from Ashoka University. And we may have a few more who join us for this ceremony. But right now, I would invite Mr. Murthy to deliver his welcome address. Over to you, Mr. Murthy.
Thank you, Bhavna. Hopes, welcome to this press conference. My dream for India is to be a country where the poorest child in the remotest village in India has decent access to good education, healthcare, nutrition, shelter, and hope for a better future for itself and its progenies. Economic progress plays an important role in making this happen. In this millennium, the only way this can happen is through leveraging the power of the human mind. Almost without exception, every country that has succeeded in becoming or desiring to become a developed country has worked hard to improve its higher education and research system. India too is no exception to this trend. The new education policy headed by Dr. Kasturirangan and with people like Dr. Manjul Bhargava aims at making our education system much more problem-solving oriented. The objective of Infosys Science Foundation is to encourage our researchers to reach for the skies in solving India's problems of education, healthcare, water and air pollution, and nutrition, among many other pressing problems that confront us. We do this by honoring role models in research for youngsters in 6 areas. We believe that India's focus cannot be on just applied research, but has to be even on fundamental research. After all, quantum mechanics led to lasers, CDs, DVDs, laser printers, and many other modern inventions that make our life more comfortable. Maxwell's fundamental research in electromagnetism helped Michael Faraday's work in making electricity such a useful and ubiquitous form of energy for our lives today. It is the basic research of Kurt Gödel, Alonzo Church, Alan Turing, and Claude Shannon that has made the ubiquity of internet access and networked computers possible today. I'm very happy that some of our winners, Ashok Sen, Thanu Padmanabhan, Manjul Bhargava, Akshay Venkatesh, Abhijit Banerjee, Gagandeep Kang, and Esther Duflo have received other important recognition for their work. This year's prize ceremony will have Professor Srinivasa Varadhan as the chief guest. Professor Srinivasa Varadhan has been a highly recognized researcher in mathematics and statistics at the Courant Institute of Mathematics at the New York University. He won the Abel Prize, considered an equivalent of Nobel Prize for mathematicians. He has served as the jury chair for mathematics for almost 10 years and has recognized talent like Ashok Sen, Manjul Bhargav, and Akshay Venkatesh. We are honored to have him as the chief guest. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Murthy. It was wonderful to hear from you. And to announce the winners of the prize this year, we have a brief film presentation that I'd like to play for you now.
An environmental problem of a much greater magnitude.
Amazon rainforest to run out of water.
While the coronavirus continues to spread at speed.
In a year of uncertainty, when people are looking towards science and scientists for answers, we are acutely aware of the central role of innovation, critical thinking, and the scientific spirit. The Infosys Science Foundation recognizes the brilliant work being done by researchers and scientists. We hope that shining a spotlight on their work will inspire future generations to adopt a spirit of inquiry and a scientific temper. To this end, the Foundation set up the Infosys Prize in 2009 across 6 categories: Engineering and Computer Science, Humanities, Life Sciences, Mathematical Sciences, Physical Sciences, and Social Sciences. The Infosys Prize is among the highest recognitions of its kind in India. In our journey so far, we have recognized 68 stellar researchers, scholars, and scientists. Many of the winners have gone on to blaze brilliant career paths, winning more accolades, contributing to cures of diseases, charting frontiers of space, finding solutions to poverty, and taking on challenges like climate change, improving our education system and the world economy. In other words, their work is not only critical but touches every part of our lives. The prize consists of a purse of $100,000, a gold medal, and a citation by the esteemed jury from top universities across the world. We are pleased to present to you today the winners of the Infosys Prize 2020. The winner of the Infosys Prize in Engineering and Computer Science this year is Hari Balakrishnan, Professor of Computer Science at MIT. Professor Balakrishnan has commercially applied his work in mobile telematics through an application called Cartel, which potentially improves driver behavior and drastically reduces road fatalities, making our lives much safer. His work in mobile and wireless systems and internet architecture has led to several other important applications. He is being recognized for his broad contributions to computer networking and his seminal work on mobile and wireless systems. The distinguished panel that deliberated and chose Professor Balakrishnan is chaired by Professor Arvind, who is the Johnson Professor of Computer Science and Engineering at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. He is a renowned computer scientist whose work was instrumental in the development of dynamic data flow architectures and associated parallel programming languages. We are pleased to announce the winner of the Infosys Prize 2020 in the Humanities, Prachi Deshpande, Associate Professor of History at the Center for Studies in Social Sciences, Calcutta. We cannot know where we are going unless we know where we came from. In this context, historical memory and the recording of history are important endeavors. Professor Deshpande's work examines how the practice of writing history evolved, specifically with reference to Maratha history. an eminent panel chose Professor Deshpande from among her peers. The panel was chaired by Professor Akhil Bilgrami, Professor of Philosophy at Columbia University. Professor Bilgrami is a philosopher of language and mind. His other interests include political philosophy and moral psychology. We are pleased to announce the winner of the Infosys Prize 2020 in the Life Sciences, Rajan Shankara Narayanan, Chief Scientist at the Center for Cellular and Molecular Biology in Hyderabad. Our winner this year works in the field of structural biology and most specifically on the building blocks of life, the amino acids. He has contributed to the understanding of how the genetic code translates from one generation to the next without error. Dr. Shankar Narayanan's group found that an enzyme helps in removing the harmful D-amino acids. The finding has enormous implications not only in unraveling the mystery of how life evolved on Earth, but can also be applied in the field of medicine, such as in neurodegenerative disorders. The illustrious jury that recognized Professor Shankara Narayanan's work is chaired by Professor Mriganka Sur, Professor of Neuroscience at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. He is a pioneer in the study of the organization, plasticity, and dynamics of the brain's cerebral cortex using experimental and theoretical approaches. The winner of the Infosys Prize 2020 in Mathematical Sciences is Saurav Chatterjee, Professor of Mathematics and Statistics, Department of Statistics, Stanford University. Professor Chatterjee works in mathematical statistics and probability theory, a branch of mathematics that plays an essential role in many theoretical and applied fields, from predicting weather phenomenon to genetics to research and politics. Professor Chatterjee has made the study of statistical physics and probability his life's work. He is known for his formidable problem-solving powers. His contributions to the field have had significant impact in diverse areas like the Yang-Mills theory and random growth models. The renowned jury that selected him is chaired by Professor Chandrasekhar Khare, Professor of Mathematics at the University of California, Los Angeles. His work with Jean-Pierre Wintenberger gave a proof of a celebrated conjecture of J.P. Sayre in number theory that had remained unresolved for more than 3 decades. The Infosys Prize 2020 in Physical Sciences is awarded to Arindam Ghosh, Professor, Department of Physics from the Indian Institute of Science, Bangalore. Semiconductors form the basis of many important technologies such as computers and electronics. Professor Ghosh's work in the development of atomically thin, two-dimensional semiconductors has led to a new generation of electronic, thermoelectric, and optoelectronic devices. The ability to detect even very small intensity of radiation is critical for applications in photography, low-power communication, optical sensing, as well as in defense and security. His work represents a paradigm shift for these devices. A distinguished panel chaired by Professor Srinivas Kulkarni, Professor of Astronomy at Caltech, selected the winner for this year. His primary interests are the study of cosmic explosions, neutron stars, and developing new methodologies for astronomical research. We are proud to announce the winner of the Infosys Prize 2020 in Social Sciences, Economics is Raj Chetty, Professor of Economics at Harvard University. How do we approach the problem of inequality? Does access to an education, healthcare, and other resources affect the chances of success in life? Professor Chetty looks at these questions by collecting massive amounts of data to see how economic mobility is directly related to access to resources. His work combines economic theory and empirical data and has implications for policies to improve governance. When COVID-19 hit, his organization, Opportunity Insights, set up a data tracker to examine how the coronavirus is affecting economies each day in each neighborhood and state. Professor Chetty was chosen as the winner by a very accomplished jury chaired by Professor Kaushik Basu, Professor of Economics at Cornell and former Chief Economist of the World Bank. The Infosys Science Foundation feels immense pride in announcing the winners of 2020. We hope that these scholars will inspire the next generation of the country, steering them towards research and exploration.
Congratulations again to all our winners. And I am very happy that some of them could join us here today. Professor Hari Balakrishnan, winner of the Infosys Prize in Engineering and Computer Science, is here with us today. Thank you for joining us. I know it's very early for you. And Professor Sankar Narayanan, our winner of Life Sciences. Dr. Prachi Deshpande, the Humanities winner. And Professor Arindam Ghosh, who is our winner in the Physical Sciences. Thank you all for being here today. We would now like to open the floor.
Chatterjee.
I missed Professor Saurav Chatterjee. Thank you. It's very, very early for him. So I think, yes, with crickets chirping in the background. Thank you for joining us. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Murthy. And thank you to our winners. So I would like to open the floor for questions from the media. I would request members of the media to restrict your questions to 2 and no more so that we have enough time for all to ask their questions. We will, of course, request you to unmute yourself and come on camera if you're going to ask the question on video and address, of course, our laureates, trustees, or jury members, and of course, Mr. Salil Parekh, who's here as well. We will restrict our questions to non-business ones. Today is a day when we are celebrating our winners and honoring science and research, so please keep your questions to those.
Well,
our very first...
If you permit me, I would like to say that having these laureates, most of them, is a rare opportunity for our reporters. So I would request them to take advantage of this opportunity. They have been very, very kind to participate in this press conference at not so convenient hours, particularly for people like Professor Saurav Chatterjee, for whom it is now probably 4:45 in the morning. 3:45 in the morning. Therefore, I would request the reporters to take advantage of their august presence. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Murthy, rightly said. Our very first question is from CNBC TV 18, Mukta Warrior. I request you to unmute yourself and come on video. Thank you.
Yes, hello everyone. This is Mukta from CNBC TV 18. Firstly, congratulations to all the winners. My first question is to Mr. Nilekani, and I want to ask you a little bit about the use of digital technology to fight the pandemic currently, and also for a vaccine solution. We are very close to having vaccines. UK today, of course, has authorized one such vaccine. Simplest, which is an Infosys company, is also now working on a vaccine management cloud solution. I firstly wanted to understand from you what its applications could be in India. And the Prime Minister himself has said that technology will be very crucial to ensure vaccination reaches everyone. Has there been any discussions between the government and the IT industry on the best way forward? They're also launching their CoWIN platform for vaccine delivery and vaccine management. How is Infosys and how is the IT industry discussing with the government on the best way forward? Any thoughts or any comments on that? My second question is to Mr. Murthy. Today is about science and research, and I wanted to ask you about the fact that education has now gone online, but there is still some gap in terms of access. Not all students have access to online education, or may not have the correct environment at their homes for online education. How longer do you think will this be sustainable? States are still not opening schools. Karnataka said they will not open schools till the end of December. What do you think is the impact because of this gap in access to online education? And since, lastly, Mr. Murthy, since we're talking about learn from home, I also want to get your comments on work from home, given that there are now permanent OSP relaxations brought in by the government. You have mentioned that you're not a fan of work from home permanently, but which way do you see the industry moving? With that, it's over to you.
Mugdha, today is a day to celebrate the winners of the Infosys Prize. But I think what the last 1 year has shown us is the extraordinarily important role of science and technology in solving the world's problems. And the fact that we have been able to get to the vaccines with less than a year is thanks to the advances made by scientists and researchers like the people who are today's winners. I also think that technology, we are able to function again because of the improvements done by technology in terms of providing video conferencing and all that. So I think let's focus on the winners today, and certainly we can have a separate discussion on how we can apply technology for vaccination. Thank you.
Well, I think Nandan answered it appropriately, and therefore there is not much for me to add. I entirely agree with him. Today is the day of the winners of this prize. Today we celebrate their achievements, we salute them, we stand up and cheer them. So therefore my request to you is, as Nandan very rightly pointed out, to focus on Infosys Prize and its winners more than anybody else, just the winners. Kindly, let's focus on that.
Thank you, Nandan, and thank you, Mr. Murthy. Let's move on to the next question that we have from our journalist Aisha Khanum from DD News.
Good afternoon to all dignitaries, and congratulations to all the winners of this Infosys Prize. I think that no session or no discussion is complete without talking COVID and related issues around it, especially the technology. In fact, I had the same question to Nandan, because technology, I mean, any big project, any big issue stems from a technology in Bangalore, as be it BSC, be it Aadhaar. It is Infosys that has lent, a huge network support for the project. So even I had the same question about the technology network which is getting ready for the vaccine distribution. But I leave it to you to answer that. I mean, if Nandan wishes to take that question. And the second thing I would like to ask, I would like to talk to Professor Shankar Narayanan, winner in life sciences, right? He's a prize winner in molecular biology. Professor Shankar Narayanan is here.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah. Hello.
So congratulations. My question is to you, Professor Shankar Narayanan. Congratulations on winning the Infosys Prize. And now all eyes are on life sciences and molecular biology in this present situation. How do you look at the race for vaccine which we are seeing across the world? And every vaccine is of different formulation, different make and different dosages. How does the scientist look at standardization of a vaccine since the pandemic and the virus seem to be common and seem to have same effect everywhere. What about the vaccine? How are the scientists looking at this competition, across the world to come out with the vaccine, which we can save ourselves from this killer virus? So, what are the scientists looking at? And also the fact that patent is another issue, because now the vaccine is required to be manufactured at a large scale, and patent perhaps will come, in the way of some manufacturers' distribution, because every vaccine has different range, different formulations. So how does a scientist like you in the molecular biology look at this issue?
So thank you for that question. Let me start with a disclaimer that I'm not an expert in the area of virology. Having said that, including in places like CCMB, there are efforts which are going on with respect to tackling this pandemic from various angles. However, as you were saying, that there is issue with respect to competition in terms of vaccines, and the scientific community does not look at it as a competition, because currently we need multiple solutions. And as you know, many long-term vaccination programs have had very differential success in their implementation as well as their effectiveness. So currently, what we think is that the more solutions that come from different sources, we will have multiple arsenals in our kitty, and you do have implementation issues which are very different for different vaccines. So the more number of vaccines that come from different strategies that are used by the scientists will be of immense help as we now, in say next few months, we are going to take it to the field. So when you take it to the field, the result is going to be, quite different in terms of the feedback that you will get rather than the test cases, because we are going to be with the population. So the feedback from different vaccines in the field will be of immense help so that we can effectively strategize how to use these different vaccines. So finally, to summarize, we look at multiple solutions to a problem, as always for any scientific problems, and this will be useful when we go to the field. Thank you.
I think, as I mentioned earlier, today is a day to celebrate the extraordinary men and women who have been honored in the 6 segments. But I think it's also a celebration of the fact that the complex challenges of the world can only be solved by science and research. Just to give an example, in 2016, the Infosys Prize was won by Gagandeep Kang, who was the first, later on went on to become the first woman to be appointed to the FRS. And she was heavily in the area of virology and immunization and so on. So I think we have those kind of people in previous winners, and we am sure that our current winners also will do some extraordinary work now and in the future.
Thank you, Nandan, and thank you, Professor Shankar Narayanan. Up next, we have Chandra Ranganathan from ET Now.
Hi, good evening. Congratulations to all the winners. I'm sorry, I haven't had the opportunity to read more about your work because the winners were announced just a while ago. But I have a broad question for the trustees or the jury chairs, if they are there. How much did the pandemic really weigh on their minds when they were evaluating the winners this year? For example, were any of them working on, say, futuristic solutions as far as technology is concerned or science is concerned, or anything else? I just want to know how much this weighed on their minds while they chose the winners. This question can be answered by Mr. Nilekani or Mr. Murthy. My second question, Mr. Murthy, in your opening remarks, you spoke about how research and education and science is really key to any nation's progress, be it economic or otherwise. Do you believe India today is paying a price for investing in research and development? I mean, UK is rolling out their vaccine next week. Japan is going to give all its citizens vaccines free of cost. So, or do you believe that we will now start taking these things more seriously going forward?
Well, we are a young nation. We have made considerable progress thanks to the vision of our first Prime Minister, Jawaharlal Nehru, our IITs, All India Institute of Medical Sciences, Atomic Energy Establishment, and later on, thanks to Mrs. Indira Gandhi, ISRO. I mean, all these things have come up in the recent past when you consider the history of nations. So we have made pretty impressive progress in these early years. And I have no doubt at all that looking at the kind of people that the jury chair have looked at in these 6 categories, the future of India is bright. The future of India is promising. And therefore, I am very, very confident that India will move forward with the right solutions to our various problems. After all, we have the new education policy, which was headed by my friend, Dr. Kasturi Rangan, and it had one of the winners of Infosys Prize, Dr. Manjul Bhargav, as a member, and they are focused on problem solving. So I think a lot of good things are happening. So therefore, I would like to be very optimistic about what is happening around us.
The other question, sir, in terms of how much did the pandemic really weigh on the jury's minds while evaluating the winners in terms of the work they plan to do or the work they are doing?
Chandra, I don't know if there is any jury chair present in this press conference now. Bhavna, you can correct me if I'm wrong. My understanding is we do not have any jury chair present because it is, it's perhaps rather early for many of them. That's where, as I was telling Nandan before, we are all very, very grateful to the winners for being present at such an early time in the US, particularly Professor Saurav Chatterjee, for whom it is probably 4 a.m. or 4:15 a.m. he is present. So having said that, Chandra, as a matter of principle, right from 2009, the day we started this, we said we are not going to give any instructions on who to choose, how to choose the winners. It is not for us. We are not experts. Therefore, we have chosen very competent jury chairs who have distinguished themselves on the global academic scene extremely well. And then we said, once you pose a problem to an expert, you should just leave it to them. Therefore, in all honesty, I don't think we spoke about the pandemics or any other issue to be an important influential factors in choosing the winners.
Got it, sir. Thank you so much. And congratulations again to all the winners.
Thanks, Chandra.
Thank you, Mr. Murthy. And I think we have Akhil up next from the Deccan Herald to ask his question. To unmute yourself.
Yes, my first question is for Professor Arindam Ghosh, whom I've met before. Professor Ghosh, as you know, I've been following your work for a couple of years now. And I wanted to ask you about the implications of your two-dimensional semiconductor work. What sort of applications can we expect to see in the future in terms of devices or technology? My other question is for Professor Balakrishnan. I've never followed your work before, but I was interested to hear about mobile telemetrics. Telemetrics, is that what it is?
Yeah, mobile telematics.
Telematics, that's right. Okay. So, the implication of this is to make, reduce accidents. So my question to you is, can this technology be used in India, and can we make Indian roads safer at some point in the future?
Okay, since the first question, I'll go ahead first. So very quickly, there are two major directions in which this particular work can be applied. First is in imaging. Extremely dark conditions, which is why, usually the kind of camera that we see on our mobiles, on our laptops, are unusable when the condition becomes very dark. So one of the things that we discovered is sensitivities which are 1 billion times more than the cameras which you get, locally in various conventional devices. So that naturally becomes useful, and there are already companies which are coming up elsewhere on implementing similar concepts to create night vision cameras, for example, multi-pixel photosensitive devices. So that's one direction. Another direction in which I am actively working on and taking this invention forward is in the domain of quantum technologies. And the quantum technology is becoming very important. There have been a mandate from the government as well, which will be investing in it. And one would expect that in reading out and in implementation in quantum mechanics, in quantum technology, in which you need to detect one single photon, these kind of inventions or these these discoveries will become a very important platform. So these are the two directions in which we are looking at in the near future.
Thank you for your question. If in the next two minutes, about 5 people will have died and about 400 people injured on roads worldwide due to issues with our roadways and crashes and accidents. And actually, since 2014, this problem has been becoming worse, even though cars are becoming safer around the world. And the reason for that is the smartphone. This is an extension of our bodies, and we use them all the time, and even while driving. And especially while driving in many, many countries. So how do we deal with this problem? How do we deal with understanding phone distraction and making people aware of it and making them safer drivers? So that's what mobile telematics is about. And the provocative idea here is to use the phone as a solution. It is the problem, but use it as a solution. And because it has many, many different types of sensors, and a very nice connection with what Professor Ghosh just talked about, he works on the underlying foundational technologies, and my work uses those to come up with algorithms to understand from the sensors on people's mobile devices, automatically understand and model how people are driving, and then combine that with behavioral science to provide incentives to make people better drivers. Now, this has been a long arc of research. I started working on it about 20 years ago on more foundational questions related to how do you determine the distance between devices using sensors automatically, handling situations where things like GPS are quite inaccurate, especially in urban areas and urban canyons, over to the past, over the past 20 years. And a few years ago, started a company that is commercializing this technology and is now in about 25 different countries, serving millions of users, built on academic research, which was originally done without this application in mind. And I think that's an important lesson for a lot of the type of research that the honorees here and all of us do, which is sometimes you don't have the right application, you have the right ideas. And India is a great opportunity for us. Our company is, in fact, in some trials and pilots in India. But as we all know, India has some pretty unique challenges as far as driving is concerned, which really will require us to change some of our algorithms. But we're looking forward to that.
Thank you, Professor Ghosh. Thank you, Professor Balakrishnan. Great answers. Thank you. And congratulations.
Thank you. Our next question is from Money Control, Swati Murthy.
Hi, good evening. I just have 2 questions. The importance of research cannot be said enough, but with the countries looking inwards, how do you see geopolitics impacting the innovation, the technology space? That is one. And 2, I think that the previous Science Foundation speech, we have heard about how India is not investing enough when it comes to R&D. We invest only 0.6 to 0.7% of R&D compared to other countries. Do you see COVID bringing the focus back on the research?
Could you please let us know who your question is addressed to?
Anybody, I mean, Mr. Murthy, Nilekani, anybody can answer it.
Thank you.
Well, as all the winners here know better than I do, good quality research requires an environment of openness to new ideas, discussions, debates, learning from each other, learning from other cultures, other countries, being open to share whatever we know with other countries, all of that. So therefore, I think this pandemic obviously kind of came in the way of physical travel of people. However, thanks to technologies like the one that we are using now, it has in fact increased. So that has not played any inhibiting role in exchange of ideas amongst the experts. That's that. So I would say that's what. On the second issue of India spending only 0.6%, we have to all recognize that we are a very young nation. We are still in our infancy in terms of higher education, research. I mean, leave aside all the wonderful Nalanda and all of that were there, a long time ago. But in the last 200, 300 years, if you were to look at the last 200, 300 years, it is only in the last 100 years or so, probably last 70 years or 75 years, that we have taken big initiatives in creating higher education and research infrastructure. So therefore, I think as we start moving, as we start seeing the benefits, as we start solving some of our problems, I think the policy makers will also be highly encouraged, and they will definitely start allocating higher and higher percentage of our GDP, our budget, the budgets to these activities. And it will happen. I would say that it is just a question of time, and it will all happen. And we have to be positive and optimistic about these things.
Mr. Murthy, just one clarification. Do you not see geopolitics coming in the way of innovation with countries looking inwards, even with this vaccine race, or be it anything, the geopolitics not coming in the way of innovation?
No, reality is simply this. Yes, in the case of a country, for the last 4 years, there was some friction. There is no doubt about it. All of us know that. But however, there is going to be a new era. Lots of changes will take place. And therefore, the world will become much closer starting 21st January 2021. So therefore, I am very positive that the issue of geopolitics will not hinder the collaboration between experts in different nations in solving global problems. You have sustainability as an important thing, climate change as an important issue, the pandemics as an important issue, water availability is an important issue. I think all these solutions will have to be left to experts, and we have to provide them all the facilities. I think the coming decade will see that happening, definitely.
Thanks a lot, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Murthy. Next up, we have Pearl D'Souza from the Indian Express. May I request you to please ask your question? Pearl, are you here with us? If so, could you please unmute yourself? We'll come back to her later. And right now, I'd like to invite Deepika KC from The Hindu to ask her question, please.
Hi, good evening and congratulations to all the laureates. My question is to the laureates today, and any of them can answer this. I have two parts to the question. One is, like Mr. Murthy mentioned about geopolitics not hindering, research. I wanted to ask, does multidisciplinary research come to the fore given the circumstances now? Because the pandemic is not just about science or health, it's also about economics. There are various aspects that come into play. So how important does multidisciplinary research come into the fore? The second question is about the pandemic itself. Did it sort of, alter research methodology, or did it bring any changes to your areas of interest or research this year, or say moving forwards?
Saurav, why don't you please start?
Okay. Yeah, it has. The pandemic has certainly, impacted research. So first of all, it's all online now, so we don't go to conferences, and we have, virtual meetings. But that has, created this thing where there are lots of online conferences now, which are completely, recorded, and they're placed, for posterity, the recordings. And I think that's going to be really valuable in the future, that we have all these recordings by of many great speakers, and there are many of them are now online, and it's changing the culture. It'll have a cultural impact on the whole of academia. I think we're not completely going to go back to the way it used to be, even after the pandemic is over. So that's one thing. The other thing is, certainly many people are working in coronavirus or general epidemiology related areas who were not working in those areas before. So it has really been a great stimulus for people to look at these things. And all the successes that you will see in fighting this disease, there'll be some people at the forefront, but there'll be the many other people who are working behind the scenes, maybe developing the theory, or and whose whole thing will come together. And so it's a huge international concerted effort that has led us to this fight against the pandemic. And in some ways I think it will eventually be a great thing for science, even though it's been so deadly and so tragic in many ways, that it will spur a lot of developments in the future.
I think I just would like to add one word to what I said earlier, to that question of geopolitics. There is a saying in business, and that is, it says, every CEO in the world, no exception, extols the virtue of competition in public and does everything possible in private to kill the competition. That is the reality. However, every CEO also realizes that there are certain pan-industry issues. There are certain issues where we need the cooperation of other players in the marketplace. And that's how the whole industry moves forward. So similarly, I think even though nationalism may have become stronger in some countries in the last 4 or 5 years, I do believe that there will be progress in science and technology to solve global problems. So I just wanted to add that.
Thank you.
I think if I may add a comment for you to your question, I think that the way in which society has responded to the pandemic in many ways to me has been quite extraordinary. I think it was Arthur C. Clarke who once said that any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. And I am just amazed at how quickly the vaccine has come to be. And in my mind, there's no magic. This magic is built on decades of really hard creative work based on foundational research. The same applies to the fact that we can have this session today. It's not magic. It's built on decades of research, going back to the invention of the networking technologies and video conferencing. And the web is only 30 years old. And today we're having something where it feels like we're in the same room. I think that is really the nature of research, which is sometimes you do these things, the killer applications, the key applications come later and build on the research that's done. And the ability of society to respond quickly is based on research. So while it's important, and a lot of us are helping behind the scenes on things like contact tracing and all of the things, probabilistic modeling and so forth, to deal with the pandemic, the next such crisis we cannot predict. But the investment in research and the cultivation of research today will allow society to react very quickly to whatever that next thing might be. And that is really why it's important.
Bhavna, can I add one tiny comment to in response? It will not take more than 30 seconds.
Of course, please do.
All right. First, this is a very important question, and particularly the context of geopolitics during the time of pandemic. I have to add one from the Indian context, and that is the importance of being self-reliant has become more apparent than ever, simply because the technologies that often we import, we buy, or we get are not becoming absolutely certain anymore. So what we need now is a whole chain from basic research to product development to be happening in multiple sectors. And that realization has come particularly during the pandemic. I just wanted to add that.
Very valid points all around. We will give the next journalist a chance to answer the question, to ask her question. Prajanma Das from the New Indian Express.
Hi. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yeah, right. My question is to Mr. Murthy. So you spoke about research in India and how we're a budding nation, but a lot of our researchers have to go abroad to pursue higher education. There are better facilities there, and there's more opportunity. You also spoke about the NEP, and you're pretty optimistic about the NEP. Do you think the NEP will help stop this, what some people call the new age brain drain?
I'll tell you, I am somewhat of a contrarian, and I think many of my wonderful colleagues, co-founders, they also believe in this. And my belief is a small percentage of competent Indians have to go out of the country. They have to conduct themselves as highly productive, competent, and useful and model citizens of that society, and raise the image of India among those societies. So therefore, I personally do not believe that there is any, that we need to worry too much about this so-called brain drain. I also do not know of a single non-resident Indian who is not willing to help India in whatever way he or she can. Not one. And I have been traveling for the last 50 years. The first time I went abroad was in 1971 to MIT to participate in a conference. So it's 49 and a half, almost 50 years now. But I have not come across one Indian, one non-resident Indian who said, I don't want to help India. So therefore, my personal view is, why don't we reach out to these wonderful people, welcome them, provide all the necessary facilities for them to come for whatever short period they can come here, and they can add value. So I want to look at this problem not as a brain drain issue, as creating highly competent ambassadors of India in various countries. And that's the way I have looked at all along my life, my career, and I think most of my colleagues would agree with me.
Yeah, thank you, sir. But do you think that NEP will increase the chance of research in India and increase the research, like sort of enhance the research environment in India?
Yeah, well, one of the objectives of the new national education policy is to orient our students towards critical thinking, towards proactive problem solving. Therefore, they are bringing about changes in the curricula. They are bringing about changes in how classrooms should leverage the power of learning to learn. And I do think that it will all happen in the years to come. These changes will not take place overnight, because change of culture is the toughest problem that the world has handled. So we have had a certain culture in the past, and to get to the new culture, it will take a little bit of time. But thanks to the new education policy, thanks to the wonderful role models that Infosys Prize and other initiatives create, I do believe that India will make significant progress in critical thinking, in problem solving, and ensuring that the major problems of our society are solved using applied research, and in some cases, hopefully even basic research.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you so much.
Up next, we have a journalist from ETV, Prashob. Please ask your question.
Yeah, thank you. Congratulations, everyone. My first question is for Dr. Shankar Narayan. As the whole world is waiting for the vaccine, considering India's population, what percentage of population must be vaccinated to bring down the R value?
Yeah, so this is something which people are trying to work out quite hard. In fact, if you know, in the very initial stages of the pandemic, people were talking about having a herd immunity, correct? And that herd immunity would, people were saying that we should wait for the herd immunity and then the problem will naturally be solved. But we now know that that could have been possibly a disaster. And we can't wait for a herd immunity to happen. The same way, when we look at the vaccination as a program, there are going to be serious implementation issues, and we need to handle it so very well. And it's going to take quite a few months to a year. So the suggestion, which is coming from multiple bodies, if you have been listening to, coming from different sources, including from the government bodies, is that there are social vaccinations which people should adhere to. The first and foremost is that we need to know how effective these vaccines are on the field, followed by how are we going to implement this program and to which sections are we going to target. And there are some rough guidelines that are emerging now as to which section of the population that we should be looking at. So these things will take quite a bit of time. And I think the suggestion from the learned bodies is that we should go for social vaccination, like social distancing, masking, and so on and so forth. So the value that you are talking about is something it's almost impossible for someone to say that the vaccination should bring this R value to this effect. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Prashob.
I'm sorry. I have the last question to Mr. Narayan Murthy.
All right.
ನಾರಾಯಣ ಮೂರ್ತಿಗಳೇ, ಈಗ ಇಡೀ ವಿಶ್ವ ಒಂದು ರೀತಿಯಾಗಿ ಒಂದು ಆರ್ಥಿಕ ಬಿಕ್ಕಟ್ಟನ್ನ ಎದುರಿಸ್ತಾ ಇದೆ. ಸೊ ನೀವು ಭಾರತದ ಆರ್ಥಿಕ ಭವಿಷ್ಯ ಯಾವ ರೀತಿ ನೋಡ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದಾರೆ? ಇನ್ಫೋಸಿಸ್ನ ನಾರಾಯಣ ಮೂರ್ತಿ ಭಾರತ ಆರ್ಥಿಕ ಭವಿಷ್ಯ ಯಾವ ರೀತಿ ನೋಡ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದಾರೆ?
You know, you asked me a question in Kannada. Much as I would like to answer it in Kannada, I think for the sake of the wonderful guests that we have in the cloud, let me answer that question in English. I think India's future is going to be bright because, you know, we have now gotten used to 5%, 6% growth rates. A few years ago, we would not be happy even with a 8% growth rate, 7% growth rate. But as against 20, 30 years ago, when we were quite happy with 2.5%, 3% growth rate. So therefore, we are now used to 4.5 to 5.5% economic growth rate. Therefore, automatically our citizens will work towards exceeding that, achieving that, and in some cases exceeding that. So therefore, I think I'm quite optimistic that our economy will move forward in tandem with the global economy. We are no more we are no more the backbenchers in terms of economic growth, as against what used to happen in the 60s, 70s, and even 80s, when, you know, in 60s when I was a student. So I think we are in for a positive environment where people want to be satisfied only if we achieve a globally acceptable growth rate. So that's the positive side. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Murthy. And our last question for today, as much as we would love to have more, is from Seema Singh at the Ken.
Congratulations to all the winners, and congratulations to the foundation for a phenomenal 12-year journey. As far as I understand, one of the reasons this prize was instituted is to make pure science glamorous again. Do you think Gen Z is attracted to basic research? I mean, this question is addressed to Professor Dr. Saurav in one context and, you know, Dr. Arindam Ghosh in another context. What is your experience as you deal with, you know, this generation? I mean, are we moving away from basic science, basic research? Because in the last 20, 30 years or so, particularly in India, the default higher education has been engineering. So, you know, Infosys Prize was to sort of, you know, create a different kind of awareness and excitement for basic research.
Saurav, do you want to go first?
Okay. So yeah, I think you know, this prize, and the Infosys Prize in particular, is a great thing. I mean, it's a great motivator, and certainly it makes it more glamorous. So that's you know, all of what you said is correct. And also I think you know, basic research is going to grow in India, because India is becoming, you know, Indians in general, the economy is becoming better and you know, than before. So we were a much poorer country, and as economic security increases, you know, it's sort of like the arts, you know, that as a society becomes more secure, it focuses on things which, you know, may not be yielding immediate returns, and so I think basic research has a great future in India as we make progress, and you know, this kind of thing which makes it more glamorous is extremely important, I think.
What's your experience with Gen Z? Because, you know, that's a very different kind of crowd altogether.
So the younger people, you know, I have seen, you know, among students, they're much more confident than people of our even my generation, so the younger people who come to do, you can see that in sports also, in cricket, for instance, that they're much more confident and much more outgoing, and so that's great to see. That's just wonderful to see that.
Okay, I can add to what Saurav has just said. It's a very important point. And let me tell you the change in the psyche that has happened ever since Infosys Prize came in and continued over the years. What we have to now understand is it's no longer within India anymore. I mean, you have to now excel at the global level. So what now the Gen Z and the Indian practicing scientists look at is how to do the best in the world and not just best in India. And that is something which is extremely important. Change in the perception that has taken place over the last decade or so. I think what it has done, it has made people more ambitious. It has made people more competitive. And you can see there is an overall enthusiasm to do very high quality work. And I think that's the success. That has certainly percolated over entire strata of Indian scientific research and education in general. I would add that to what this sort of said.
Thank you.
Yeah, and personally, I would be very glad if the same kind of thing happens in the humanities also. As Professor Deshpande can attest, if more and more people come to the humanities and bright people, smart people, that would be terrific too.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. In fact, humanities needs a renaissance of its own because, as I said, we've swung far too much on the engineering side. So we really need to have more people coming in humanities and doing research in humanities. Thank you. Thank you for taking my question.
Thanks.
Bhavna, can I just say a couple of sentences in response to that?
Yes, please, go ahead.
Okay, so in response to the need for more humanities research and the earlier question about multidisciplinary research, I hope that people will, as they go out into the field, with the vaccines and think about useful technologies and how to communicate them to people. They will also draw on a lot of work that is going on in various disciplines of the humanities and social sciences about cultural histories of health, of the body, of community, of medicine, and that these have not been objective and static or have had the same meaning throughout the centuries, but have changed. There have been pandemics in the past, and not so long ago as well, and how we in the 21st century will understand how people react to not just microbes and social sort of vaccinations, but also lockdowns and things like that. These affect all sorts of cultural practices. And I think the humanities have a great role to play in sort of communicating with the basic researchers and the engineers and the scientists in making all of this work. So I'm very glad that the Science Foundation has a prize for the humanities and the social sciences to enable this kind of conversation. We of course need more people interested in this as well. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Deshpande. And I think the very last question, which we had missed earlier, is from Megha at ET, and then we will wrap this up.
Hello?
Yes, Megha, please ask your question.
Yeah, hi Bhavna, thank you for taking time. So I wanted to ask Mr. Murthy that India is planning a science and technology innovation policy. How is the Infosys Science Foundation contributing to that consultation? And what kind of inputs would you like to give to the government on the new policy that they are planning on innovation and science and technology?
No, I think Chris is the right person, or Nandan. These two people can answer that because I am not involved in that. Chris, as you know, has been appointed as the chairman of the Innovation Hub of the Reserve Bank of India. And Nandan is always there whenever it's a question of new technology and how it can benefit our country. So these are the two people that can say something about it rather than me.
I think let Chris answer because he's at the forefront of brain research and innovation.
As we have been all saying, and you have heard from the laureates also, this is probably the best period for doing science research in India. There is a movement from all parts of all segments of the society, including from government, to increase the focus on basic research, applied research, entrepreneurship, innovation, startups, the whole value chain. And it's also reflected in the new education policy, where, again, from problem solving to National Science Foundation, there are various initiatives under the new education policy also, specifically to the science and technology. There are many people who are contributing to that. They have a very, very large consultation process going on. Many people are involved, and we are all giving our inputs to the policy setting.
Thank you, Chris.
Thank you.
With that, I would like to thank the members of the media also for being here today and asking so many meaningful questions. We know that we haven't taken all of them. You can be in touch with us for conducting further interviews or email answers to your questions, get email answers to your questions. I would like to thank our trustees, our laureates, members of the jury, and Mr. Salil Parekh for being here today, and request you all on our behalf to join the Infosys Prize virtual ceremony where Professor Srinivas Vardhan will felicitate the winners. So that's a wrap from us today. Thank you.